Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to CJJC 23 Years In. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz, sitting here alongside the great Trevor O'Connor. How you doing today, Trevor?
I am great. I'm just excited to watch high quality jiu-jitsu. I am a fan. Today, I'm just here as a fan.
I mean, we're grateful to have you here as a fan, providing some of your expertise on everything for us here on the AV side, but also being able to join on here for the pre-show for CJJC 23 Years In with all the expertise and the media experience that you bring. You know, I mean, once upon a time, years back, you broke me into the business, so it's great to be able to be back here on the call and doing a little bit of something with you.
You took that George boy and you have been running.
I mean, sometimes all it takes is somebody to open up the door for you, and you have to make the most of those opportunities. But, Trevor, what do you say we dive into things here?
Let's talk about the
First of all, yeah, house audio going through its last final steps of preparation here before we kick things off, folks, at 12:30. But starting off in the main event, this bout sponsored by MMA Fitness, we have a 200-pound no-gi matchup between a UFC veteran and Cody Brundage, who will be taking on young Jamie Mullen out of Houston Training Center. The Factory X product is fresh off of a victory at CJJC 22 last month. Him and his wife are both competing on the card today, so this is kind of a family affair here for the Brundages, and Cody's looking to go out there and impress. He said that he foresees the first round finish.
Oh, put a prediction. I love we got all the I mean, obviously, Cody is not going to be walking in the case. Only but Jamie,
Jamie is a very tough competitor, and I think that Cody has the experience factor is something that you do have to weigh in when you have somebody who is trying to get by. He was
sometimes the house sound guys just love to show off their beats.
Just getting after it a little bit. They're trying to set the energy, so we'll give them the benefit there. But as we were mentioning before that, Cody has been in major opportunities or major bright light scenarios, if you will. He's gone up against a low nickel at UFC 300, which was obviously quite the spectacle of a card. And then he also, in his last matchup here with CJJC, he went up against a very talented leg locker from the Subhounds in Donald Rose now. So stylistically, Jamie and Donald have some similar characteristics to their game. I think that Cody, after that last matchup, he thought, you know what? Protecting my legs. This might not have been the most entertaining matchup, so that's why he said this time he is looking to aim to impress and to entertain the crowd.
And that's exactly what you want to see in a pro BJJ show. I mean, it's jiu-jitsu, and you're always going to get that, full guard, butt scooching argument against being able to be excited about live jiu-jitsu. But in a show like this where it's sub only, there's no reason to not just go for it at all times. I always tell guys when they're going to go into a grappling competition or they're going to be on a pro show like this, the best thing you can possibly do is either win or lose in spectacular fashion.
Totally agree. I totally agree with you there. And that's a matchup in that main event that I think that the fans will certainly be able to walk away from here feeling like they were entertained from based off of the mentality.
I believe it. They both know how to put on a show.
Certainly.
There's no question about it. They both know exactly what to do, where to shine, and how to make it.
100%. And then moving on from that, in the co-main event, we have a 165-pound no-gi matchup sponsored by the MMA Club and comments from the Peace Gallery. Now, one half of this matchup was a late fill-in, and that is Grant Giesinger from Catalyst Jiu-Jitsu. He's taken on the very dangerous, ultra-talented young phenom, Josiah the Ghost Garcia out of Fulcrum BJJ. Josiah Garcia has more than 5 subs in competition alone from a baseball matchup. If that's not a signature move, I don't know what is.
I mean, the kid's obviously going to be swinging for the fences. But anybody out of Catalyst, you have to be on your A game against them. Very, very, very careful with what you do. They're very wily. They move in non-traditional ways. That Catalyst gym, I don't know what they're doing in the water up there. It's incredible.
Certainly, and with multiple Catalyst competitors on the card today, we might as well move along to the feature bout of the afternoon, where we have a massive opportunity for young Kenzie Cassell, who has been active with pretty much every big show that's been going on lately. And she is meeting a very stiff and tough test against somebody with a tremendous amount of experience, but has been away for a little while in Amanda Brundage, formerly Amanda Bobby Cooper of the UFC. AGC was the Ultimate Fighter finalist against Tatiana Suarez, spent a tenure in the UFC, and then has just since been away from competition since they started the family. But she is back making her return to competition here today, and I tell you what, Bobby is ready to go.
And what better way to kind of put your foot back in that swimming pool than a BJJ competition that is live, that is in front of fans that want to see the show. And again, she's been to the highest level, UFC Ultimate Fighter finalist. I mean, this should be her swing. This should be exactly where she wants to go. If you're making that move coming off of either an injury or starting a family, there's a large amount of time taken away. I mean, why wouldn't you first just run that BJJ game up?
Certainly, and I think that's kind of Bobby's mentality in the process. But we also, when we're talking about the body of work coming into this matchup, there is something to be said about the activity that Kenzie has had, but there's also something to be said about, and albeit, again, we'll recognize that it was a bit of time ago, but having experience in there competing against the likes of Tatiana Suarez, or in the straight up, a royalty person of the jiu-jitsu world in fighting Mackenzie Dern in Brazil.
Absolutely.
So having that experience, I think that she is kind of just like as we mentioned for her husband, Cody. She's not averse to the bright lights. She's going to be ready to go, but it's always a matter of, that first time back from competitions, there's always going to be a little bit of something.
You never know. You never know. Do I still have it? Has the game passed me by? Am I not? I mean, it's there. You look at large periods of time off. It makes you think of like a Michael Chandler who waited so long for that Conor fight that he had to just get in the cage and get in the fight, but he didn't seem to have ring rust. He was right there. So I'm not big on blaming ring rust or anything. If you're training, if you're constantly on the move in a great gym, then you should be ready for that. And this is the stage to really find out if you're mentally back where you want to be before you start making another run in something.
Certainly, and I could not agree with you more. And Trevor, you've been around the game for a long time. I just want to hear your opinion as we speak to some of these folks who, some of them, it may be the very first time that they're watching a CJJC show. What is your thought, or how do you love the adversity of the cage being brought into the element for grappling itself?
So, for me, watching jiu-jitsu, like most other people, just watching jiu-jitsu on a big flat mat, sometimes it's like watching paint dry. I mean, it just is what it is. When you shrink that down and you put them in a very limited space, but you also offer barriers so that you can trap someone against a cage and really go to work and really find your groove. It's like having an additional appendage because there's a cage in the same way. Sometimes when you're in trouble, being able to shrink your ass back against that cage is pretty amazing. We have seen some really, really, really high quality technical jiu-jitsu in the cage from guys that you wouldn't expect it from. They've never been in an MMA fight. They do not work in a cage, but they find a way to use the cage as an advantage. I believe it also speeds up the jiu-jitsu.
Agreed. And I will also offer this point to you. I believe that it really makes it truly a grappling match as opposed to a straight jiu-jitsu match,
Right.
if you will, because it brings in a lot more of the element of wrestling into the game, the wall work, all of those things that, if you're accustomed to mixed martial arts the way that myself or where I spend the large majority of my time, this bridges a gap of some of those things too, of where, I love watching the wall work and seeing some of those little details, or a lot of the fighters who I've had an experience with or have known from these shows, they tend to have a bit of an advantage when it comes to this, as opposed to some of those jiu-jitsu guys who haven't spent the time working off of the wall, or maybe don't spend as much time with the wrestling element of the game. It is kind of an unspoken thing a lot of times in the jiu-jitsu room or in jiu-jitsu sessions. We're kind of starting on the knees, starting on the butt a little bit, slap up and go, as opposed to always starting up top and working from the ground all the way down. And some of that is, it's a hard thing to do on the body consistently, to always go top down, going through some of those big blast double dumps, so on and so forth.
But at the same time, if you transition to MMA, they don't let you start on your knees.
Correct.
If you are, let's just take this to the real world. If you are out and about and something happens and you have to defend yourself, defend your family, defend a situation that's going on, the best thing to have in your arsenal is the ability to take somebody to the ground and put them where you want them. Gyms that don't train takedowns or do not lean on takedowns as hard as they should, I think they're doing their jiu-jitsu players a huge disservice. Get everybody started on their feet as often as you can. Now I understand limited space. When you're putting 12 groups of people on a mat, you don't always have the space that's available, because guys have a tendency to dance across the floor when they start on the floor. But again, in the cage, they can't dance away from you. You cannot run. If you are not a takedown guy, you could be in a lot of trouble in the cage.
And this also, just everything that you mentioned right there, Trevor, kind of piggybacks to a point that you were making earlier, in that why not let this be kind of a catalyst or a jumping ground? If you are someone who you've been going through some grappling, or maybe you're a wrestler and you're trying to get into fighting, well, why not let this be something that's kind of as you're going through the early stages of your development, why not let this be kind of a mini exhibition fight, if you will? You don't have strikes in the mix, but then go out there and still also, do your mixer or do your smokers with striking.
That's
and all
exactly
the
what I was going to say. If I was a young me again and I was going to start fighting, I would be in the gym doing BJJ all the time, constantly. But again, then I'm also going to work my boxing, and you have to work some form of Muay Thai, or whichever one you fall in. But at the point where I'm starting to feel like I'm putting something together, I'm not going to take an MMA fight. I'm going to take a CJJC show first, where I can understand working myself in the cage. I can grapple. I'm not going to put myself in horrible danger. I'm not going to get knocked out because I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm going to be able to find my way around. Then I'm going to do a smoking. Then I'm going to do a kickboxing fight. I'm going to just put it all together before I take that first amateur fight. And promotions like CJJC are exactly what young fighters need to build their arsenal. It also gives them some resume.
100%. And one last thing that I want to hit on today before we wrap up this pre-event show is there is kind of an event within the event today, Trevor. We have a 4-man no-gi bracket that's going on. That's going to be, I think that whenever we have these little instances, we had one in the bantamweights a couple of months ago, and those guys seeing the heart and the grit that they had to go through some hard-fought first matches. One of them even went all the way through double overtime, comes back, rallies, and has a deep scrap all the way in the championship rounds. I mean, to have another opportunity for that this time at 165 pounds, I think that we're going to see a little bit of bigger boys. We're going to see a little bit more grit and intensity, and we're going to get at it.
165 is the pinnacle. In my opinion, like that 165 for jiu-jitsu or 170 in MMA is the pinnacle of skill and athleticism that come together. Those guys are still fast, but they're also super strong. They can move. They're technical. They usually have really good gas tank. As we start to get in the bigger guys, the gas tank shrinks, and then they start to get slower. But then you take smaller guys. They're not as strong. They're not as they don't have that one hitter power. So that 170, 165 range, probably in every combat sport, is right around my favorite weight class.
That's a very athletic range. And speaking of athletes, in this bracket, we have Zach Lindsay. Zach Lindsay being a former collegiate running back and also the brother of former NFL star Philip Lindsay. Right. So just as you mentioned, athletes, well, there it is right there. There is a very high-level athlete who has been making his way into the combat sports world, competing in everything possible, whether it be submission grappling to straight boxing, MMA, and everything in between. Gotta love seeing it.
You gotta take, you do yourself a disservice if you do not take advantage of the opportunities as an amateur to build your skills, to build your resume. These guys are going to get so many greater opportunities because they're going to have films of something like this. Because they're going to have 3 or 4 combat jiu-jitsu style matches. They're going to have some smokers. They're going to have a boxing match. And those guys are easy to match with.
Absolutely. And speaking of matchups for him, it's not going to be an easy walk apart for this first round, as he has the reptile Carlos Fajardo. On the other side of the bracket, fresh off of Leg Locktober, you have Robert Taylor with 10th Planet Parker. All of those guys under Nico Raditz, they are assassins and they are clean with the leg technique, especially it seems like every fall show that we have in November, just off of the wake of their unit being all specifically dedicated to that lower half. We've seen some pretty gnarly finishes from those guys, too, in the mix. He is going to be taking on Anthony Delgado of the Farm Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu up in northern Colorado. Anytime you have somebody from the Farm, whether it is in strictly Jiu-Jitsu or in these other combat sports disciplines, they're always gamers. They're ready to roll.
And the Farm guys are grinders. They're that old school wrestler type mentality where they're going to go full bore. They're going to come at you and they're not going to slow down. They do not move backwards, so you can expect there to be fireworks.
Absolutely. If we were to say if you were asking me, Trevor, I'm thinking stylistically for this matchup, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, just based off of your years of experience and competition. I'm trying to get in and out that first round. And I'm trying to make this to where I am as fresh as absolutely possible. Sometimes, depending on what your game, you may have a little bit more of a breaking down methodical approach depending on what your style is. That all being said, I think if you're having to potentially go for 20 minutes of regulation and another 4 of overtime if you're going the distance in each bout,
I don't want to grapple 24 minutes.
That is not a fun situation to be in. Your legs, the adrenaline dump at the end of that is not going to be fun.
Forearms are just spent.
Legs
Cardio.
feel like they're concrete.
If you are in a 4-man competition, such as this, get your first match and get out as fast as you can. Then just start your recovery.
Absolutely. Now, as we take a look, as we're about to wrap up this pre-show here, is there any other matchups on the bout sheet that stick out to you or that you think that we should highlight here?
I always love to see the ladies get involved. Female grapplers, just like female MMA fighters, there's not the feeling out process like there are in guy fights or guy matches. They get to the middle and they get at it. So we have another female fight on the card that I'm looking at right now in Janelle. Barella. Oh, that's Barella. Yeah. And then, yeah.
Oh yeah, they're gonna get after it.
So it's a 115 teen match. I guarantee that it's going to just
absolutely, it's gonna fly. They're gonna get after it, and that's another thing that I love about these grappling shows is we have the opportunity to be able to showcase the youth as well as our adult competitors out here. It's just the legal limitation that you run into with other combat sports, and especially with with MMA.
You don't want to put a 15 or 16-year-old in an MMA fight.
Exactly.
I mean, save the strikes to the head. Save them. You're going to need them later.
Definitely, and we get to have the opportunity for, as you mentioned, there's never been a bigger share of the market or more of a take rate, if you will, for women within combat sports and martial arts as there is right now. I had a couple of people who are interested in coming and watching the show. Hey, I'm bringing my niece out, I'm bringing my daughter out, I want to start training, and so I hope that the performances and the display that they see today gives exactly that, some inspiration to go and start training.
I tell every person I come across and ask me about combat sports, if you have daughters, if you have nieces, Christmas is right around the corner.
I couldn't agree with you more. I believe, and this is a completely different rabbit hole of a discussion that we can go through, but I believe that for young kids, especially young girls, it should be a requirement in school. It's necessary, in my opinion.
Mentally and physically,
certainly. And real quick before we head out on things, I want to mention our sponsors in the process here. I want to give a rundown to everybody in the process. We will say thank you out there to Balter Photography, Ugly Dog Sports Cafe, DCO MMA and Fitness, Gold BJJ. We also want to say thank you to the MMA Club and the Peanut Gallery. And to wrap it all off, one last time, we want to say thank you to all of you tuning in here for the pre-show. I'm Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments for the Peanut Gallery. Check me out every week on the Mile High Sports Network with the MMA Club. That is Tuesdays live from 2 to 3. I'm sitting here alongside the Colorado Combat Sports Broadcasting legend, Trevor O'Connor.
You can catch me online at Trevor Does It _words, or you can also catch my new podcast on my YouTube channel, and that is youtube.com/FOXX. Talking about me and Mike Gonzalez talking about life after adrenaline.
Awesome topics there. Your first episode back, you guys are back. 4 years.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful right there, folks. That is it for us here on the pre-show for CJJC 23 years in. We will see you on the broadcast here shortly.